First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody for joining us for this really great screening. We feel so honored, and thank you, Julie Wynn, for giving us access to this very interesting and touching film. I think there is nobody amongst us who in some way has not been touched by this illness, be it personally, be it through family members, be it friends. So it resonates, I think, especially with women, very, very strongly. As it's an interesting choice for giving women to choose to show a film like this. And I think it really makes a lot of sense because the focus of our discussion today is about how art can be used for healing. And over the years, we have actually had several projects where this has been the core element of the project. We had one which was called Common Threads. We had another which calls the Red Pencil. At the moment, we are working with Lensational. So it's something that we recognize as being a very powerful instrument for self-healing, but also forgiving. So I think it's that double aspect of it, which is really important, looking in and looking out, which is very much the way that we work at Giving Women. I think we have participants who don't really know who we are. So Giving Women is a membership organization based in Switzerland. We have two chapters, one in Zurich and one in the Geneva area. And our purpose is to bring together women. And as I always say, there are only two criteria for being a Giving Women. One is that you're a woman, and the second is that you really want to be. And once those two criteria are served, then you're a Giving Woman. So really, it is open to everybody. It's very inclusive. And it's bringing women together who want to really give back to other women. So we work on really projects which we help to capacity build, very often quite small project, which we help to grow or to be more impactful by the sharing the knowledge experience of our members. The other side of the work that we do, and this is why we are doing these screening, these panel discussions, is that it is important for us to also to bring many of the issues that women are facing throughout the world and really highlighting the incredible solutions. And today on the screen, I see some amazing women who are finding these great solutions. And one of the other aspects of our work is that the more we share our knowledge, we share our experience, we train ourselves, we can become more impactful in the way that we work. Today, I am very, very moved and honored that we have my dear friend, great mentor, the person who really helped me to get to where we are with Giving Women, Antonella Notari. She is, you know, a legend in Geneva in terms of working for women's issues. And she is just like an incredibly special human being. And I am so delighted that she was able to moderate our panel tonight. Thank you, my dear, 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 wonderful friend, Antonella. Antonella will introduce a panelist because the panelists are also very special in my heart as well, and they all know that. But before I pass this on to Antonella, I want to also thank Julie and ask Julie just to say a few words about her relationship, how she was able to get us this incredible access to the film. So Julie, you're on. We can't see you, but you're on.
Yes, yes, hello, everybody. I'm really happy to have all of you here to watch this, I found, amazing movie, very touching, and also showing the power of art in all our lives. And Prune has a very strong art statement, focusing on different issues, which connects a lot with the Giving Women, on the empowerment of women, and also the resilience of women across the world. And that is something we wanted to show you. Prune is not here today to discuss with us about this film, but for a good reason. She just had a baby mid-April, and so now she's on maternity leave, taking care of her baby. So the life cycle has continued with very positive notes, and we hope that brings hope to everybody, and also to to the people who had suffered some illnesses or are suffering from them, and also to all these amazing women who support other women. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Let me take it from here, and thank you very much for the opportunity to have this conversation. Thank you, Atalanti, for inviting me. This conversation we will have in two parts. First, I will be asking our panelists, the leaders of these wonderful organizations, some questions, and then obviously we will also take questions from all the participants. You could start putting questions already in the chat. I will do my best to keep track of the questions. If I miss any, Kathleen, I'm sure will help.
Yeah, actually, Antonella, I'm just going to come in here very quickly. So if people use the Q&A rather than the chat box.
That's right. Oh, right. Good to remind me.
Okay.
Use the Q&A, please.
But the chat box, you can make little comments. You can send us little messages if you're coming.
Yeah, no, thank you for reminding me. It's a bit
Q&A, and also people can towards the end, they can also, if they go to their own name on the list, they can put their hand up as well, so we can also potentially take some you know, verbal questions as well.
Oh, right. Yep.
Okay.
Excellent. Good.
Oh, and by the way, the other, for people who see other names here, you know, like Eliana, Natalie, and myself, it's just we're staff and sort of in the background, but we'll be mostly muted and you won't see us.
Thank you for your support. You're great. Thank you very much. So yeah, the first part will be talking to the panelists, and then the second part you can come in with the questions. And we have here with us as panelists Tianna and Emily, who are both founders. Hello, say hello to Tianna and Emily. Founders of A Space Between. I am not going to, at this moment, explain your organizations because I'd like you to talk about them. I just want to say welcome to all of you. We have Roberta, who is the founder of Social Enterprise Project in Jordan. Ciao, Roberta. And we have Bonnie, who is the CEO and co-founder of Lensational. Hi, Bonnie. I would like to start the conversation right away because I think we have until 9:30 together, and definitely want to make sure that people have the opportunity to ask their questions as well. So, you know, we just saw this extremely powerful film of an artist who her art is sort of beyond human almost. It just even sometimes in the size and in the scope of the things she does. And then on the other side, she showed herself in her full humanity, really laid herself bare in truly in those words. I don't think this is going to be a big conversation on the movie itself. It's rather inspired by the movie. But I thought I'd like to ask you, the panelists, if I gave you 2 words to describe what the movie means to you, what would these 2 words be? And I encourage the people who are participating in this conversation, put your 2 words in the Q&A or in the chat. It's not really a question, but put them there as well. But I'll start with you, Bonnie. What would your 2 words be to Serendipity of Prune Nourry?
The 2 words are interconnected and humility.
Yeah. Roberta?
Art heals.
Yeah. Emily?
There were so many, but I think the 2 that really came to mind were human essence, that comes as 1 word, and visceral.
Yeah. And Tianna?
I would say familiar and reflective.
Yeah. We can maybe come back to these things that you said, because of course they're at the same time mysterious, and they say a lot about you. But let's start a little bit with a little bit of background. Maybe if each of you could describe the organization that you have set up and what the mission is of your organization, the context in which you work, what are the kinds of needs that you're trying to meet, and how do you work, how do you go about it? Let me start with Roberta, with SEP.
Okay, yeah, SEPJordan is a 7-year-old organization. It's a social enterprise. Our mission is to bring thousands of refugees above the poverty line thanks to their talent, and here comes the art, and through employment and empowerment. And so that's our mission. We work with 500 embroidery artists who happen to be refugees and who live in or around the refugee camp called Jerash camp in the north of Jordan.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep it short because I'm sure that we can answer a lot of questions later.
Absolutely. Thank you. Maybe just 2 words on how you meet, how you work.
We work thanks to technology. I am at the camp 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they from the camp are actually in Geneva, the same kind of time frame. We work as if we were in the same room and as if we were speaking the same language. I have to say, thanks to technology, Google Translate, WhatsApp, and you name it. And we work as a team. We are colleagues. There is no, in this kind of social, well, it's a social enterprise because there is no donor-recipient relationship. We are colleagues and we're all on the same level.
And so the women produce crafts and art in the camp, and then you are putting it out there for sale.
We tend to import all the raw materials because there's no high quality textile availability in Jordan per se. So there is the whole logistical aspect. Then there is the creation, which is artists who work from home or at the workshop, mainly from home though, and are trained for 2 months so that they all work at a very, very high level, internationally high standards. They deliver, they pass their quality control, they get paid for their work, a 50% premium to market every week. Every Monday, anyone who passed quality control knows she will get paid. In a very transparent way. Everybody knows within the organization what the prices are and the fact that they are higher than market. And then it's where we take over from Geneva because our responsibility is to distribute and market their wonderful creations.
Great. Yeah. Let's leave it there for now, but I'm sure we'll come back to that. Bonnie, do you want to tell us a little bit about Lensational, what the mission is, how you work, in which context?
Yes, great. I will use similar keywords for with what Roberta was saying. So we're also a social enterprise. It's also about creations by these really talented women who just find themselves in different life circumstances where their talent couldn't be maximized. Yeah, so kind of just similar, and I think that's the beauty also of this conversation, how all of our stories are also connected. But to bring it back to kind of what Lensational really does, so we're a social enterprise. We provide photography and storytelling training to marginalized women and girls, and we provide platforms to sell and showcase their work. So their work mainly being photographic work. When we're able to sell them, 50% of revenue goes back directly to the women, and the rest goes back to our organization to support our work. So we talk about our theory of change on 3 levels: emotional empowerment, the ability to tell your own stories, especially photography is a digital tool that transcends cultural and language barriers. A lot of the women we work with are illiterate and don't have kind of what we might take for granted, being able to write, to express ourselves. And there's also a lot of interesting things we've looked at around photography in healing, phototherapy. A lot of psychologists actually use this in helping patients with trauma. So we take inspiration also from phototherapy. So emotional empowerment, economic empowerment, and advocacy. I mean, we lack women's voices in so many domains, from media to advertising, and we try to distribute these women's work in any channel possible so that their voices are really integrated and could influence world issues such as climate change or supply chain transparency. So the context we work is really in the most difficult context. We work with local partners. We've done programming in 23 countries, but currently we're quite focused on Kenya, Ghana, Bangladesh and Hong Kong, working with migrant workers. And we have a very interesting way of teaching. The training is 8 hours, and that's the basic training that takes inspiration, as I mentioned, from phototherapy, psychology, but also journalism, and also kind of commercially how they can take good photographs. But it's really the group work that makes a difference. So we always teach in groups of 10 to 15 women, and it's learning from each other and supporting each other. And after basic training, some of them might say, okay, that's fine with me, I learned something, I go back to my life and I take this new skill. But some of them might want to continue engaging with us. We can provide them with mentorship, or we link them to other groups that can support their aspirations further. Yeah, so that's kind of the way we work. And I just want to end with perhaps one really nice summary from one of our students. One of the first students we taught back in 2013. She's from the Philippines, and she made this little poem. I'll just read one line from that. But she said for her, photography is bringing out the other side of you, and is a fulfillment of a dream.
Wow, yeah, that's very, very powerful. And just one follow-up question for you, Bonnie. How do women actually come to enter into this program?
So we always work with local partners. So often we get inquiries because of our social media reach. People reach out to us and say, we're really interested in your program. How can we take this into our community? So we'll work with local partners that already work with different groups of women. One fresh in my mind, because I was just looking at their photo, is a community in Kenya in a slum area called Mathari. So there's a local group called Mortality Foundation that's been supporting young people, and they realized that the girls in particular needed additional support, and they're really interested in photography. So they reached out to us, and then we gave them training. Similar to Roberta, we are separated by geography, but we train them virtually through Skype, and then they train the girls directly on the ground. And then after a few days, I'll receive photographs in my inbox. Here's what they have taken, and then we try to disseminate them. But it really is linked to those connection points we have on the ground. Occasionally, we also receive inquiries from women and girls directly who want to learn. And then we just try to support them. We've done kind of one-to-one Skype sessions as well. But as I mentioned, it's really group, which is so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for explaining that. Who would like to take the word on behalf of Space Between? Emily, Tianna?
I think I'm taking the first question, and then we're sort of swapping between us. So
okay.
I think relative to the two of you, we're quite a new nonprofit, but we are a nonprofit organization. We launched in November 2019, so quite recently, and our mission is to make the practice of art a powerful connector, widely accessible and integral to enhancing health. And this spoke to the three of us as founders. We've together dealt with independent and converging journeys in mental health, chronic illness and cancer. And we realized that in conversation and in the gestures that we extended to one another as friends, that there was a gap in the well-being and the health sector for spaces that allowed for creative connection and the benefits of creative therapy without it being art therapy, without it being a finite research project, both of which have huge value. And without there being, again, like a sort of a peripheral finite artist in residence project. So we wanted to create a nonprofit platform that was committed with longevity to allowing for creative connection and bringing the therapeutic benefits of creativity to what we call the places that need it most. We have a primary focus on hospitals and community groups, and our main resource is this really simple but has proven to be very powerful idea of coloring and drawing for one another. And the reason for that was because as we were trying to come up with different ideas and different entry points to this, different sort of the most universal gateway to accessing this, what we call creative flow, we were trying to think of what was the most playful, universal, kind of inwardly and outwardly connecting resource and material process we could think of. And we came back to that basic idea of coloring in, and and what it does is that it gives permission to the participant to start between the lines in the kind of safe space. And then as we find time and time again, there's a progression from that space to hopefully, or not necessarily, beyond the lines and kind of growing creatively from that and accessing creative flow therein. But also what these coloring sheets do is that they allow for connection with one another. So they allow for connection between the artist and whoever's coloring in. And then at our tables, and I'll come to that in a minute, there are 3 different ways we deliver our resources, one of which are these open access art tables with no barrier to entry, open to all ages, which we sadly can't do right now. But at our sessions, what we find is, what we wanted was to have an area where people could come together and do something, be it doodling, be it coloring in, and for that to be the catalyst for conversation and connection. In that same way that we kind of need to either do something, or ideally we go for a walk and we find that better conversation is made than when we have that intensity of looking one another in the eye. We found that it works, and that when people are sat together and they have this really simple thing of connecting back inside and being playful and coloring in, all of a sudden conversations happen, connections happen to one another, and yes. So the way we deliver these resources are by way of these open access art tables in hospitals, in community centers. We deliver creative care boxes, which is our primary delivery point at the moment because we can't access the tables in person. And we share our resources digitally with hospitals and community groups. So I think.
Yes, thank you. Maybe who are the kind of people who participate at the creative tables in particular, or maybe also the people who receive the creative boxes? Who are you catering to at the moment?
Should I take that?
Oh, no, you want to take that one?
Yeah, go, Tianna.
Well, in the first instance, the idea was we were focusing on in hospital, as Emily said, and the community center, working with the local community center, which was an elderly group, in fact. But in light of COVID, suddenly we couldn't get into the hospitals. And the work that we've been doing with the elderly group made us realize actually the importance of the connect. They immediately went into isolation. They were the first group to go in isolation, and we wanted to continue that giving them that access to these materials. And as Emily said, we went digital, we went online, and it became very clear that the same messages, the same importance of connectivity and using art as a way to, let those worries dissipate, to connect to one another, albeit a grandfather to a grandchild on the other end of the world. So actually, where in the first instance the hospitals were for the patients and the families and even the staff, the idea was that you could come around the table and we would break down those not only generational barriers of all ages, but also the staff and the patients, and give them the safe space to come and connect. But actually, the minute we went online, it was for everyone, and we all sort of a nod to serendipity, this idea of we're all human, we all have the same needs, and we can all benefit from the healing power of that creative outlet. And really just about that, as Emily said, that creative flow, rather than it being any kind of product. It's less about the outcome and actually about just being able to escape one's thoughts or communicate with color in a way that you wouldn't be able to with words. So really, where we started 6 months ago we were looking at, yes, it was for everyone because everyone goes into hospital at some point, sadly. But really now it's sort of, it's opened up to a much wider and even a global audience.
Mm-hmm. Wow, even from just your descriptions now, I can see how strongly this all connects between you and also with the movie, because you're talking about creating community, you're talking about building connections, and you're talking about all the healing and empowering effects that has all this creative and artistic work. You're talking about, you know, how, especially now, of course, we all feel it, how the people you work with in different ways, because they are different in different contexts, but how they can be isolated and alone, and how you're drawing them into something that is a community where they feel safe and where they can create, and that empowers them, and that adds value back. I find it very interesting how that all even also recalls what she does, what Prune does in the movie, but goes through all that you're doing in your work. And actually that brings me to my next question, because I would be really interested to know why you're doing what you're doing. And I'll start with Bonnie. If you can tell us what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so I started doing what I did with the kind of after a light bulb moment. So there was one incident where I was traveling. It's quite a cheesy story, but I was taking photographs just as a tourist, and then 4 Turkish girls came up to me and asked me if they could take pictures with me. And then so we posed and we just had a really great time together. We spoke English to each other, but it was really because we shared that moment of experience together, and that memory and that photography allowed us to really connect on a much deeper level, on an emotional level, that we then stay in touch. And I edit them on Facebook and kind of see the pictures they take, and then visual narratives they tell about themselves. I think I was around 18 at that time, and the girls were I think just a few years younger than me, but and it was 4 Turkish girls wearing hijab. And when I kind of see the visual narratives they tell about themselves and the stories I see on media, it was such a great contrast. And I just felt these stories coming from these girls need to be heard, and they should have the agency to tell the stories themselves. So it was kind of an inspiration, that a moment that kind of got stuck in my mind. I always thought, what more can I do? And I kind of began to visualize this idea around Lensational, giving women and girls a platform to tell their own stories, training them photography. But then reflecting back, I think it was really because I was raised by my grandmother, and she is illiterate, but she loves taking photographs, and she used the camera so much that we bought her, I think, around 15 years ago. And these two stories really connect, because the Turkish girls kind of gave me an inspiration. And then after that point, I started seeing the experience of my grandmother also differently. Like, you know, when you grow up with someone, you just take her for granted. And then I did not realize that she had a lot of difficulties expressing herself, and that her story really wouldn't translate to any other cultures, and that I might need to be her conduit, you know, if I want to share her story in English with my friends. But really, I wanted her to be able to tell those stories herself. And then really coming back to this point of photography, and I think it's the story of my grandmother that gave me the energy to continue for so many years, because in the beginning, a lot of people thought it was a dumb idea. I was kind of pitching this, and people were like, oh, photography, oh, like just endless list of reasons why this wouldn't work. But I just really had the conviction of it having at least a difference to some women and girls that I've come across, and especially my grandmother. So I think, yeah, this is really why I do what I do, because my grandmother means so much to me. She suffers so much, and I believe women in my generation stand on giant shoulders. Like, was it not for the women who've done so much and make life easier for us, we wouldn't be here. So I kind of constantly feel this sense of, I guess, just giving back and really ensuring that I also make life easier for women and girls coming after me who won't have as many barriers as I had or our previous generations had. Antonella, I think you're muted.
Yes, sorry. It's always complicated with this technology, isn't it? But no, beautiful story, and a story about how, and I think other people have said that already in this conversation, how art and pictures are a form of language that is somehow more immediate, intuitive, very human, and can connect people across cultures, across different communities. And that your grandmother had that intuition that could be her way, not only to communicate with the world, but also her legacy to you. That's a great story. And well, but in a space between the two of you, why are you doing what you're doing right now? Who is it? Is it Tianna?
Yeah. It's not a difficult question. It's an easy question, but it's probably a two-part question, and it speaks to Prune's sort of the themes of the personal and the universal. We all three have a very personal reason for why we created a space between, because, and I think Emily spoke of this earlier, we all come from having used creativity and art as a way in our own healing. I was re-diagnosed with my breast cancer, came back after 10 years a year ago, and this time in my bones. And it was the first time I didn't know how to get out of my head. I didn't know how to cope. I really struggled with finding words to make sense of anything. And after 20 years, I picked up a paintbrush one night, and it was less about the product that I was going to create and more about just putting paint on the canvas that just suddenly just let things go. And there have been many moments between Emily Fardock, who sadly isn't on the screen today, but she's behind closed doors. The three of us actually connected to one another through our own experience, as I say. But equally, in the last year, the number of times that actually art became the way that I would connect to my friends. We would go as a way of they would bring a creative experience, whether it be let's go and make some clay, let's go, and Emily would sit next to me in the hospital and bring coloring in sheets, and we were experiencing at firsthand the benefits of for each other to connect to one another, for me to connect to myself. So as we were exploring this idea of how we could, perhaps as Emily said, how we could take it to the places that need it most, it was in one of those moments of sitting in my own hospital appointment and seeing us all these patients going through a very similar experience, but feeling so isolated from one another and isolated from the doctors, and seeing the doctors struggling with their own mental health. And we knew firsthand how the benefit of some kind of simple creative pause could really have great effect. And so that's, it comes from such a personal place. I now know, and it's interesting, again, Prune's I said the word that was reflective, because I think I've had time in the last, we only launched 6 months ago, but over the last several months, I've had time to reflect on really what a space between has meant to me. And I don't say this lightly. It's given me, obviously I have amazing children and family, but it's given me a raison d'être. It's given me purpose beyond not knowing how long and what tomorrow will come, and to be able to just focus on something that for the first time feels I don't feel like I have imposter syndrome. I can speak so honestly and genuinely to the benefits of this, and that's why I'm doing a space between. And I think likewise, I think it's a similar story for Emily and Fardok. And actually the first table we did, and we brought people around, whether it was the elderly group, it spoke to their experience as well. With each one that would say, oh, I'm not creative, or I'm not an artist. And then the moment we simplified the model to just this coloring sheet, this sketch, and whether it be this, and we could tell them this sketch was created for you. And now as we've launched it globally, and there's really this idea of these sketches have been created for patients in hospitals, or however it may be, people can really feel it's like the minute they start coloring it in, there's a sense of real. And when yes, so a bit of a long-winded answer, but it's a really personal one. So yes, that's why. Emily, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Well, thank you, because it is a very personal question, and you know, maybe I was probing a bit, but I think it's interesting that such strong projects come out of a very intense personal experience, sometimes a strong experience of suffering or strong encounters with people, and then become something more universal. And how was it for you, Roberta? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. There's one thing which is it's this sense of being compelled to do what you're doing, and this sense of duty to do what you're doing. It just feels like Tianna said, it's an interesting feeling of having no imposter syndrome, but knowing that you're doing the right thing and that you feel in the right place. And it's a good place to be, because it's a fruit of years and years of experiences, like you've described so powerfully. In my case, ever since I was a child, I was a little bit obsessed with everything to do with social injustice and human rights. So as a child, I watched a movie about apartheid. It was called Cry for Freedom with Denzel Washington. And I remember that I was crying and I couldn't stop crying. And then it was it's one of those moments that comes back to me now, 30 years later, every once in a while. I had the same feeling when I visited a Palestinian refugee camp in Lebanon in '97, so also a long time ago. I had this feeling that I wasn't just watching as a spectator, I had to do something. And I wasn't just gonna accept that, in specifically talking about refugees, we were gonna just store them away as if they were groceries and hope they were gonna do no damage. It was just something that I couldn't live with. So over the years, I have observed what have been put in place as solutions to the problems faced by forcefully displaced people. And I could see a pattern, and I could see a deterioration in the state of the life in refugee camps, which was consistent and constant over the years. So really it came to a point where I felt like I had to really do something. And the doing something was related to what I had done in those 20 years since my trip to the camp and when I started SEP, which was I worked in the investment sector, in the finance sector. I was analyzing companies, buying or selling their shares, but it's really important that I built this private sector culture, which allows me to think efficiently about the social enterprise that I built and the demand-supply dynamics, and make it sustainable and make it last, hopefully, for a very long time and grow. Also, it helps me think I want to impact thousands and thousands of refugees, not just a few hundred of refugees. And I really honestly think that everything I learned in the private sector is coming in handy almost every day in the SEP. And maybe, yeah, one last thing is I was I noticed that I was seeing refugees in refugee camps as human beings, as single human beings, each and every one of them, whereas this was not really the narrative. The narrative tended to put them all in one pack and label them, and this refugee label was kind of giving you all the answers. And I actually noticed that a lot of people think like me, luckily, a lot of people who are attendees and panelists today as well. And I figured that if we could put together what some women who happen to be refugees but they're artists have to say, and the feelings they have to express, and people who are interested in hearing or feeling their feelings, maybe there was a business case for that. So this is the story.
Yeah, it's great. You built from when you were a child throughout your business life to come to this point, and in this connection in Gerard with these people. And it's a great story about how you use all your life experience, like all the others have told, to build something that is actually then beneficial to others. Maybe go ahead, Roberta. We're gonna go into the conversation with the audience in a minute, but I just would like you to tell us about your greatest success, a great success story, and then maybe your main challenge. And we'll go around with these questions, and then we open it to the public.
Okay, I'll be very quick. The greatest success, I measure it for one, I mean, there have been a lot of successes, but the one I would call the greatest is not the face of it. The success is when we received an email from the buyer at Harrods in Knightsbridge saying that they thought our products would look great on their shelves. Now that in itself, of course, it's fantastic, but it was really deep, because it means that the work of a lady done in her home, in her shelter in Gerard camp, is now perceived as a luxury item, which is therefore completely changing the perception of this woman. She has actually signed every item is signed, so there is a name and there is a fil rouge which can connect the person who owns with the artist. And the fact that her art really travels, and it transcends the fact that she's stuck somewhere, and she kind of travels with it, part of her travels with it. It was important symbolically that it would travel to Harrods, because it's very far from Jerash, and it means a lot. And the biggest challenge is not at all related to operations. The biggest challenge is growing demand as fast as we grow supply. We started with 20 embroidery artists. Today we work with more than 550. And when they start working on small pieces, they want more and they want more, and they become faster. And therefore today we could produce thousands and thousands of pieces. And we can't, I mean, yeah, we are building demand and we're building a brand, but not fast enough to keep all the ladies busy. So the biggest challenge is facing 30 plus ladies every day saying, so is there work for me today? And having to say, sorry, we'll call you as soon as we have something. So, so that would be the biggest success and biggest challenge for us.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe Bonnie, do you want to tell us about your biggest success and your biggest challenge and how you face that?
So I think the biggest success also is quite hard to say because there's so many stories. But one thing that did jump to my mind is when I saw the film Serendipity, I was really emotional when I saw the part on the terracotta soldiers. And I'm born and raised in Hong Kong, and I think why I was so emotional is because for so long, you know, terracotta is this national treasure, and I've seen so many terracotta soldiers in my life, but they're always men, and I never registered there was something wrong. And when I saw it, I'm like, oh, of course there's something wrong. And of course, women can be soldiers too. And when towards the end, the women warriors, towards the end of the film credits saying to all women warriors, I mean, women are so strong, but they are just not recognized because social norms are that, oh, because women stay home, then they're not strong. because they're not out there fighting and displaying violence, that they're not strong. And so I think why I say this is because I think the greatest success for us has really been when the women and girls we work with see themselves differently, and that people also recognize them not just for the very singular marginalized category that they belong to. So very similar to Roberta, I mean, how powerful is it for a refugee woman to no longer see herself just as a refugee, but as an artist in her own right with so much dignity, right? For me, that's the biggest success. And for us, we've had so many women and girls we've trained, like the one I quoted from in the beginning of the discussion, Jem. She's a domestic worker from the Philippines. And for so long, like, people just define her as domestic worker, and she only saw herself as, when she studied, she went to university, but because of difficult circumstances, she had to drop all that and just work as a domestic worker, and she's been undermined for so long. But finally, through this process, she discovered her inner voice and found that inner strength, and also found that peer support. And then she recognized she is not just a domestic worker, and that she has so many other identities that she can embrace. And for her to transform how she sees herself and being recognized with that, and her speaking on national TV or newspapers, like, those are just those are good things. But at the end, what I care is whether she sees herself differently, because if we have this self-belief, then I think we can do anything. So that's really a bit of rambling, but I hope I kind of capture the spirit of that, kind of what success really means to me. But I think the challenge comes back to, also similar to Roberta, the wider societal value. So our business model is we partner with brands, we sell the photos taken by those women and girls. Often the biggest rejection I get is, oh, but the photos are not high quality enough. And there's always this sense of, because they are poor or not formally educated, that the photographs are not as high quality. And there's still not enough value being placed on their stories. And even when value is placed, it's not attached with money. These are nice stories to have, but these are not stories that will help my brand make more money. So I think there's kind of those values that just need to be shifted before commercially what we sell are the norm rather than the niche. So, and I think that kind of is quite linked to what Roberta also struggles with. But I do believe that something's shifting in the air. And I do think that brands or, people buying stuff will now think very differently about what kind of value they really place on things, and the value of the arts too within this current climate that we live in. So I'm optimistic about the future.
Yes, thank you. I mean, it sounds like both of you are working with women and giving them really a power to disrupt things, right? To shake things up, for people to see them differently, but also for them to take on a different role. And that's certainly a challenge, but there is hope there that things are changing. I don't know which one of you would like to answer to the question of success and challenges. Tianna, do you want to take the floor? Yeah,
I can start. And as I said, I keep on referring back, we've only been around for 6 months, but we faced a very real challenge 2 months ago when pandemic hit, because we were just about to launch officially in our in-hospital program, and suddenly we couldn't get into the hospitals, and we had to. So in fact, I think our greatest challenge is actually sort of has created our greatest success, because what we were able to do, I think, much thanks to the simplicity of our model, of our product, and the fact that we were able to adapt very quickly to and recognize that there was this common thread between, whether it be the in-program hospital program, the community outreach with the elderly, at the core, this need for connectivity and the power of art. And we took our project online, and suddenly we were able to make it global. And it was, again, thinking about the simplicity of that creative pause, and that we all have it in us to, whether maybe not be to sketch, but certainly, and we were shocked by how many sketches actually we thought everyone would just want to color in. and we put up all the donated sketches that we had from our original product, and we were inundated. I mean, I think to date we have over 400 sketches that have been donated from around the world, and this is all ages and all abilities. And you know, the 80-year-old who has written to us to say, you unlocked that love of drawing that I'd forgotten about, or the, you know, as I said before, the grandfather that has, you know, colors in his granddaughter's sketch. So I think, as I say, we were faced with a real challenge. We've had sort of challenges on a day-to-day around the table, where someone, as I said, will say, I'm not creative, I'm not an artist, and the moment we say, well, can you color in between two lines, or color outside of the lines, or just pick a color? It's as simple as that. And the success is when they realize that actually they can do it, and the benefit that they get from it. So I don't know if you have anything else to add.
I like the idea that your challenge connects to your success, that this unexpected huge problem that appears that actually blocks your work in the way you thought you wanted to do it, and then transforms it to be something even bigger. That's actually a great story. Well, I'd like to open it in the Q&A to all the participants, but you can, I think Kathleen can unmute you, we can hear you, ask your questions, or you can write them to our panelists. Please feel free to come in. I have a first question already from Mariam Sultani, who wrote to us a little bit earlier. And Mariam is also a survivor of breast cancer. And she really struggled and still, I think, struggles. And thank you for sharing your personal story, Mariam, on accepting the illness, but also accepting her body, herself. And she's saying she'd be very grateful for any advice on radical acceptance of self, body, and mind. So maybe, Emily, do you want to speak to that? Or Tianna?
Gosh, that's a big one. I mean, yeah. Do you want to unmute at the same time? Maybe we can do a combined effort on this one. Can you repeat the three elements were on at the levels of body? You're muted now.
Unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. She says radical acceptance of self, body, and mind. Sort of the whole self, if you like.
Gosh, it's a really hard.
Any of you come in as we think about this, because this is a heavy one, of course. But a lot of the work you're doing with women, I think, especially also when not with Lensational and with SEP, is also about creating self-acceptance, right? So if you,
maybe the one to sort of start somewhere, and trying to kind of connect back to what we do is that one of the things about creative outlet, and I sort of come back to creative outlet because it can be in any art form, be it the photography or coloring in or music, is that it sort of bypasses the intellect and it allows you to access a part of you. And I think maybe I could go as far as to say a bodily, a spiritual, a mind form of you that is not easily accessed with the intellect and not easily accessed on a sort of day-to-day going about your business way. And when you take that creative pause, it sort of bypasses language and it bypasses the intellect, and all of a sudden and it kind of does sometimes feel like all of a sudden, it sounds a bit naive, but you are connecting back to yourself in a way that feels free, feels truthful, and allows you in turn to connect. When we talk about connecting with others, we talk about language and making conversation, but we also talk about connecting in a sort of that universal way that bypasses language, and that it sort of goes to the essence of who you are. And I think, you know, that again harks to why we do what we do, and between us, why we've come back to this thing of creative connection, is that there's something about the art form, whichever shape it takes, that allows us to come back to ourselves and to accept ourselves, and to, again, to sort of bypass inhibitions, bypass self-doubt, and just be. That's where I'd start.
I think that's very strong. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
And I think from our experience, I mean, using photography, I remember back in, like, one of our early volunteers, she was actually doing a photography project for her aunt who had terminal illness, and photographing her every day in the remaining time of her life. And that was a participatory process both for herself and her aunt to kind of reconcile with this idea of a life ending, but using those photographs as memories, and using those photographs also as this kind of repository for you to have very difficult conversations around emotions. And that really stuck with me, because the reason why she was attracted to join us at Lensational was that she felt that therapeutic potential of photography could really help heal especially women and girls who are going through trauma. I still haven't, we have done a project in Sri Lanka with survivors of domestic abuse, and we're still going through the photographs, and I'm trying to get a sense of how that journey has been for them, because it is still work in progress, and using any art form as therapy is a very individual process. But I think something that I've learned through this medium of photography is really that inward and outward piece. And that inward piece is using, I mean, we always say this, each image is like a mirror against which we can reflect and question our perceived self and our perceived reality. And when you share those images with other people, you can then have a conversation, and they can challenge you on your own perception. Like, one of the most fun activities we have in all our class, and it can sound quite silly, but actually I hope comes from quite a deep place, is asking our participants to take selfies of themselves, and then we ask their friends to take photos of them as well. So we focus a lot on portraiture, and it's really about self-acceptance and body image. And we often find that the women, they take selfies of themselves, and, you know, we say you don't have to take a photo of your face. And so a lot of women actually don't take a photo of their face. So they might just take a photo of their lip, or like just one part of it, because they're shy and they don't fully accept their body. But you will see that their friends like really see the beauty in them. And then you contrast those pictures, their selfie, and the pictures that their friends take. And then we have a conversation. What is beauty? Do you see yourself differently? And can we actually see ourselves differently? So it's through that kind of, again, like using photography really as a conversation opener, and going back to what Emily said around creative connections, because I think we always define ourselves in relation to others, because we're all human beings. And that radical acceptance does require us to be radically honest with ourselves, but sharing with others so that they can help us in our journey of exploration.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Bonnie. Yeah, it's a great way also to describe how people can, overcome this feeling of just like Prune says in the movie. Like, at one point she says, in the whole process, me as a sculptor who is always in two bodies, I lost my body, and she really had to reconnect to her body by going back to herself, and also seeing her own fragility, and rebuilding from there. And it can be done in those very creative, in different creative ways that you've described. Anybody else have a question in the audience? Because otherwise I have a couple more questions, but please feel free to interrupt me.
I just wanted to add one thing. Am I allowed to speak?
Sure, of course.
I think what's so interesting, and in a little way it's a response to Mariam as well, is that in each of the discussions that we've had, it's been an inward and outward journey. And I think what comes out of it for me is that we can't do this in isolation. On the one hand, we need to be in contact with us, who we are, where we are, the authenticity, the reality, the facing it. But it's so important to have that connectivity and that exchange. And each one of you have talked about that. And I think that's a very, very powerful message. That, and in that connectivity, there's also enormous generosity, because you're giving also outside of yourself. And so I think that's a message that I think is very powerful from all of you. And also in the way that Prune herself, in one of the things that struck me about the film was that her journey through breast cancer, she seemed very alone. She was in hospital alone, you know, and having lived through this experience because of Tianna, I know that there was a lot of sharing. There was a lot of, you know, accompaniment, her friends like Emily, you know, the family, and she was alone. And then though, I think her connectivity comes through her communication, through her art. And I think this is what you're all saying also, it is communicating with others and recognizing. I think what was very powerful in many of the things that, one of the things that she said, I recognize, she said that I'm a human being, but what she meant was she came face to her mortality. And I think really, really powerful, and that we are all in the same boat, and that is that connectivity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I see that we're almost at 9:30, but I'd really like to go around one last time and ask whether you could also tell the people who are listening to us now, how can they get involved? Oh, I think we have a question from Eliana, or? Sorry, we have a question from Eliana in the chat. Can I just read it to you? And then, how do you feel about the idea that the artist's job is to question the human existence? Why are we here? What makes us human? All your projects remind me that art is the way we do this, but everyone is an artist. Is that okay? Or I think that's what she said. Okay, so yeah, how do you feel about the questioning of human existence and the values of human life? Roberta, do you want to go? Do you want to go there?
Yeah, no, it's very philosophical question. Maybe just related to the previous answer, here I think my value is to tell you what I hear from my colleagues who are at the camp, because they are the ones who are feeling the impact and often the healing effect of art. And what they tell me is that growing up, we're talking about refugees who have been refugees for 4 generations since 1967, most of the ladies we work with. So we're talking about ladies who have grown up and were brought up in a very conservative community, and they are brought up to deny their own self. They are, as women, just like Prune shows us with regards to the Indian girls, to the Chinese girls, they have a role in society and they have to have babies and look after the house. And it's what it is, and they are brought up and they're being taught not to question. And they tell me that they love working with us on embroidery. Well, they love working on embroidery, and then also with us because there is an outlet for their work, and because they get appreciated outside of their kind of local community. They tell me, look, well, we know that the most commonly diagnosed illness in a refugee camp is clinical depression. That's a fact. And their word of expressing it to me is I used to cry every day. I used to cry all the time in front of my children, and it was really bad because it was creating this kind of negative vicious cycle in the house and around us. And then they say, when I start working, I immerse myself in my work so much that I forget everything, all the reasons why I was crying. I never cried once while I was working, because I was concentrated, I was creating, I was pouring all my emotions into it, and I didn't need to cry anymore. And they say, when I then stop working, I have this weird feeling that I am light and my head is empty. They basically are describing what you would normally maybe feel like after meditation, for example. So what I'm trying to say is that, and I'm not saying that they're then breaking free and then taking off their hijab, and that's not what should happen either, because then we would have a bigger problem. But then they become more calm, they become calmer. They can face their problem and the daily problems with a completely different attitude, because they have this self-confidence which they've gained in those moments in which they are alone with themselves and they look deep inside and they feel something different. And the children feel it too. One day I had a Facebook message from a young child saying, I don't know what you've done to my mom, but I love it. We all love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And it was very touching, because really, we're talking about turning around the situation, which is a clinical depression type situation, and just with dignity, just removing the kind of the pity and the self-denial from the equation, you bring back the serenity, which is something that we're all striving for, really.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, more related to the previous.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody want to add a word or two to that before we conclude? I think that was a very nice way to conclude. I did want to ask just one question, and we'll make it very brief, but please do tell the participants how they can get involved with your work, the work that you're doing. Now we'll start with Bonnie.
Yeah, so we've shared the link to our website. We are currently quite focused on COVID-19 response. So we want to fully capture women and girls' experiences of COVID-19. So if you know anyone who's working on COVID-19, especially with women and girls, we'd love to partner with them so we can get content from that to build this body of work on what are the common experiences. But of course, also generally, we've been working with Giving Women on kind of our strategy, our getting more resources, selling the photos. So yeah, we always welcome any volunteers on a strategic as well as operational level, and that's all on our website. So I would love to hear from anyone who'd be interested. Thank you.
Great. So if I get that right, one of the requests you have is actually to connect you to people or organizations who are working on COVID projects, which is a great request. And also other ways to interact with you are described on your website and are also discussed at Giving Women, because you're one of the Giving Women partners. So great. Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much. Roberta, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'd like to invite everyone to go on our website, SEPJordan.com, on our social media at SEPJordan on Instagram. See what we do. If you like what we do, we really need to widen the community. We have some amazing seppers here on this call already, and I know that a lot of you never miss an opportunity to gift a SEP item and own a collection of SEP items. This is the most precious thing you can do, really, because the more people talk about us, the more we build the brand, the more ladies will be empowered. So it's very simple. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes, very, very straightforward. And I have looked at what you're offering, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So thank you very much. That's an easy one to do. If you have to do any shopping, go there. Tianna, Emily, do you want to tell us how we can get involved with you?
Yes, I mean, likewise, our website, actually our Instagram is more up to date, because we've been using that as a way to sort of really communicate on a day-to-day. So Instagram at spacebetween.co.uk, and equally our website, which talks about sort of the programs more generally. We're a young organization, so obviously donations, support, volunteering, partnerships. We have so many amazing ideas, even in light of COVID, how we want to mark and move forward with creating coloring books that we can get into hospitals globally as well. So we're looking at ways that we can, any introductions, creative ideas from other people, but equally come on the site and you can download some sketches, you can send us sketches, get involved. It's a project we're going to keep open beyond the pandemic, because we've recognized the value of that. We share your exhibition, we have an online exhibition. So at the very least, come and take a creative pause, get inspired. Yes.
Yeah. Do you actually the drawings that one can color in, do they come from artists?
They come from everyone.
Okay.
Really, I mean, from age 3 to 80, we have the likes of Coldplay. We have the the person down the street. It is everyone, and that is the idea. Everyone is a creative. Everyone has it in them. But if that feels too daunting, then you can connect to it through coloring in one of those sheets.
Coloring in. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so connections, drawing, support also in time, giving time or giving money to your cause. I'm sure. Great. Gosh, I don't want to leave you now. Okay, I'm gonna take one more round and then I promise I finish. Oh, there's a scarf on Kathleen. Okay, so if you had a secret power, like Prune mentions that in the film, she says, somebody asked me if I had a secret power. So if you had a secret power, and we'll end on this, what would it be? We'll start with Emily. What would it be? Is she there?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
sorry. God, so I've been thinking about, I think if I had, particularly right now, if I had a superpower, it would be to be able to give myself fully to everyone I love and care for, simultaneously, so that I never feel like I'm letting anyone down or not able to give, or only able to give, particularly with 3 children and husband and work and friends. And so I think that would be, I'd like to be able to give myself fully to everyone at the same, and everything at the same time.
That certainly takes a superpower. Huh? Tianna, what would it be for you?
I would say remove inhibitions. No one has inhibitions anymore. You can go and do whatever it is that you want, whether that, simply no explanation. Remove inhibitions. Okay.
Yeah, like the dinner she did. that was pretty uninhibited. Please, Bonnie, what's yours? Your superpower.
I don't think it's achievable, but I would like to be able to teleport myself anywhere, especially during COVID. I just don't want to be quarantined for 2 weeks in order to go back to Hong Kong to see my family. So
yeah, that sounds like a good power to have. Roberta, we finish with you.
Well, it's a crazy one. Prune was hoping she had the healing power, that she could just heal everybody with her hands or with her body part. And given we're thinking crazy and social injustice.
Hey, there you go. Gosh, that's a good one. Thank you very much. Really, thank you very much to all of you. It was absolutely amazing to spend this time with you. And I hand the floor back to you, Taranti.
Yes, I'd like to thank you for an absolutely amazing discussion. It was daunting in a way. How was it going to work? And I think that what really came out, and which I think is something that we all strive for at Giving Women, is the honesty and courage of our panelists. I mean, your authenticity and your honesty made it the most wonderful, wonderful conversation, and a wonderful mirror of what we saw in the film Serendipity. Again, I'd like to thank our wonderful Antonella, and we could not have done this without the superpowers of our most amazing operations manager, Kathleen, that has been juggling 1,001 things and managed to pull this off. So Kathleen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do it again. This has been tremendous. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to the participants that came. I think we lost some of our participants on the pass through, but you know, the ones that are here, we really know that you wanted to be here, and we thank you so, so much for staying with us. And to the next one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.